Hello, everybody. This is Margot Buckles, and I'm here with Megan Bryant. We're with the Washington State Beekeepers Association, and we've put together this Facebook Live presentation um, for beekeepers out in Washington who may or may not have a club or mentor available to them. And we're doing this in conjunction with GRUB, which is a veterans support organization that helps veterans who are interested in farming and other things like that. Tonight we have Paul and Penny Longwell. Penny, Penny and Paul provided me with their bio, and so I'll let you know about them. For Penny, she says that flowers, trees, blossoms, and critters of all shapes and sizes have been a wonder to her since she was a little kid, from picking berries, green beans, and peas for supper growing up to raising praying mantises in an aquarium in her teen bedroom just to see how they developed. Learning is a daily love for her, studying botany, herbology, and journalism. After retiring from 23 years of state service, Penny immediately studied to become a Washington State University Master Gardener. During those studies, she became enamored with all pollinators, not just bees. Seeing how important they all are to plant productivity, food production, and support for other animals and human existence, she saw the correlation between gardening and beekeeping. Penny and her husband Paul embarked on a journey during the past 10 years, combining their two hobbies, gardening and beekeeping. Together, they designed and planted a public 40-foot pollinator garden at the Thurston County Fairgrounds and Event Center. The flower bed is a showpiece to the public, illustrating types of flowers anyone can add to their own yards to attract beneficial insects and many pollinators. Penny serves as an active volunteer for the Thurston County Master Gardener, intern mentor, pollinator, and bee presenter for Master Gardener interns and the public, and recently received Pollinator Steward certification with Pollinator Partnership. Paul's love for honeybees began as a young man, working summers on his aunt's farm near Yamhill, Oregon. The farm raised plums, peaches, and other fruit, which heavily depended upon honeybees for full and complete pollination. After a lengthy career serving in the Army and 29 years as a public employee, Paul's love and interest in keeping and working with bees rose back to the forefront in 2011. Paul began his beekeeping career as an apprentice, then journeyman beekeeper with the Olympia Beekeepers Association. Not satisfied, he strived to learn even more about how honeybees interact with their environment. Paul studied with WASBA and the University of Montana to earn his double Master Beekeeper certification. Paul is also a certified mentor with the Oregon State Master Beekeeper program. A graduate from the Michigan Heroes for Hives program. Paul has been on the podcast Beekeeping Today as an area representative. Paul has gained experience in both Langstroth, Top Bar, and Slovenian AZ hives while searching for ways to protect his beehives during our maritime winter weather in Western Washington. Paul converted a storage building into a bee house and installed several AZ-type hives. Together, Paul and Penny give public talks via Zoom, podcast, and in-person gatherings about gardening and bees, and how important it is to create a healthy environment for our bees and other pollinators. Let's learn more from them about how to create an enticing backyard pollinator garden or to supplement plantings near your own beehive apiary to ensure early, mid, late season pollen and nectar sources. So let's get out there and plant something. Thank you, Penny and Paul, and I'll give it to you.
Well, hello and good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for joining our presentation. Paul and I would like to thank WASBA for inviting us to this Facebook Live session with all of you. Thank you for being here. We are thrilled to show you how cooperative efforts between beekeepers and gardeners can produce lasting changes in the health of pollinators, and you can be part of this too. This is a class to help you better understand pollinators and how to bring pollinators to your own home gardens, or what your mama never told you. Who are the master gardeners? I've been a master gardener for a little over 10 years now. They came into being in 1973. WSU is a land grant institute. Every state in the United States has a land grant institute, which means they're responsible for teaching, researching, and extending knowledge out to the folks in the state that they represent. WSU provides training to county offices as part of agriculture, home economics, and 4-H outreach educational programs. So we're very proud to be a part of that. This particular link here, if you want to know where you can find a Master Gardener near you, you can use this link, mastergardener.wsu.edu, and find your county and your extension office. You can usually reach them by phone or email and find out about plants, about pest and disease control, or how to start your own pollinator garden. So what do we say? We say don't make it complicated. Just get out there and plant something. We're going to show you just how easy it is. What's a pollinator? Loaded question. You guys are beekeepers, you already know. But did you know there are lots of other pollinators besides bees? A pollinator can be anything that moves the pollen from the male part of the flower to the female part of the flower. Anything means like it could be a beetle, it could be a wasp, it can be a moth, a butterfly. They all tend to go after either pollen or nectar. And when they go after nectar, some of them can accidentally pollinate because they have hairy body parts where the pollen sticks to them. Some pollinators have short tongues, some have long tongues. What we've seen through the decades and the centuries is that plants and pollinators have evolved with each other to become as prolific as they can. The pollinators that have the short tongues will go after certain kinds of blossoms. With the long tongues, they like the more tubular blossoms. One specific crop, almonds, depend almost entirely on honeybees. There are some native bees that will pollinate, but not to the extent that the honeybees can do. Commercially, honeybees are trucked in from other locations to stay within the almond tree farms and pollinate the blossoms for 2 to 3 weeks, and then their job is done. There are flies and bumblebees that also pollinate almond blossoms because of the large almond industry and the lifespan of a honeybee hive. The honeybees are preferred as a crop pollinator. Types of pollinators. Some can intentionally collect pollen, like your honeybees or the bumblebees. They have little hairs and little sacs on their legs where they can collect the pollen. Some do it accidentally. Hummingbirds, for one, they don't necessarily collect pollen, but they go after that sweet nectar. And what they do is they've got a very, very long tongue. And the tongue is actually split and it has like little feathers on the end. If you ever want to see a neat video, go on Google and look for hummingbird drinking from a test tube or whatever it is. There was a video where it showed in slow motion, hummingbird drinking slow motion, and you'll see a fascinating video. The hummingbirds prefer the long tube-like blossoms, while bumblebees prefer larger blossoms that they can land on to accommodate their bodies. Other pollinators like butterflies, birds, and bats move pollen around accidentally. As these animals feed on flowers that have pollen or berries or fruit or whatever they're after, the pollen will stick to their fur or their hair, and they accidentally pollinate, but they still do a great job. Some of the non-bee pollinators that we have around are bats, hummingbirds, moths, butterflies, beetles, yes. Actually, the beetles were one of the first pollinators way back when. Big wasp, chocolate. The tiny chocolate midge is the only pollinator who serves the cacao plant. Those flowers are so tiny that only the midge can do the job. Hummingbirds, when they feed, their foreheads rub against the stamen and the pistils collecting the pollen. There's a great article on pollinator.org about hummingbirds. I think you would enjoy reading it. The plants that are great for hummingbirds throughout the seasons is a California lilac, which is also known as ceanothus, Oregon grape, salmonberry, huckleberry, purple sage, clematis, fuchsias, any tubular shaped blossom. They adore. Number one pollinator, you all knew this one, are bees. They pollinate flowers and trees and other plants and in turn provide food and habitat for other creatures. Bees and honeybees play a critical role in the ecosystem health and sustainability across the globe. Bats, this bat here is covered in pollen. They're primarily nocturnal pollinators, although down in South America, they actually fly around during the daytime also, pollinating a lot of tropical fruit plants. But they do pollinate bananas, mangoes, guavas, agave, tequila. They're also responsible for pollinating cactus blossoms. Down in the Saguaro Desert, down in the desert Southwest in New Mexico, the saguaro cactus has a beautiful white flower that only comes out one night. So it's critical that these bats can find the blossoms, and they do. Generally, nighttime or nocturnal pollinators like moths and bats are looking for a light-colored white flower that will show up if there's a little bit of moonlight, and then generally have a fruity smell. That's what will attract them. And they will pollinate the saguaro cactus bloom. It's the lesser long-nosed bat that does that. Saguaro cactus, the wild honey hives that are around in the deserts, their honey is prized because it's primarily cactus blooms. It's highly prized and high priced, but it's very tasty. Honey possum. This is a cute little thing. This is down in Australia. The honey possum is so light, it's only less than half an ounce in weight, but it has a long snout and little paws that can get in the crafty feet that can dig into the eucalyptus blossoms and some other native flowers that can't be pollinated except for this honey blossom or this honey possum. Sorry. The point is here that there are pollinators everywhere you wouldn't even think of. The world's largest pollinator is this little black and white ruffed lemur in Madagascar. They are the primary pollinators for a palm tree, traveler's palm tree, and some other larger flowers because the flower bracts are tough, difficult to get into. But the nimble fingers of this little guy, this little lemur, can get in there. And their long snout to get into the nectar. And then the pollen sticks to their fur and they bounce from flower to flower and do their pollinator job. I'm going to talk a few minutes about native pollinators. There are over 600 species of native pollinators here in the Pacific Northwest. In the US, over 4,000. Many people don't realize, as beekeepers, I'm sure you do, but we do this class for gardeners and the public also. And a lot of them don't realize that before the honeybees came in with our European settlers, it was the native bees that did the primary pollination of native crops. But once we had a lot of agriculture and crops, we needed more than what the native pollinators could do. The native bees are the primary pollinators for native crops. But not only are honeybees at risk for mites and disease, so are the native pollinators. They are suffering as well. What's so important about the natives? They do pollinate the native plants. The native plants provide food and cover for other wildlife. The pollination of the native plants provides a lot of seed that other animals eat, and it also proliferates that crop. Those salmon berries and other plants that we see around the Northwest, that's how they get propagated, through the seeds that are dropped by the mammals who are eating them. And in early spring, those native pollinators will fly often much earlier than honeybees. We've noticed at least around our area here in Olympia, the native pollinators, the bees and the bumblebees, mason bees will come out even when it's a little chilly and it's slightly drizzly. They don't care. Honeybees are sticking their nose out and going, nah, I'm going to wait just a little bit more till it gets about 50 to 55. For this reason, since there are native pollinators out there that you may or may not see or know about, because the smallest one I think is about a 1/16 of an inch long and can fly 25 miles an hour. There goes one right there. You don't even know they're out there until you put up a native bee house. And all those little different size holes are plugged up by something. Something laid an egg and something packed it in there. They're out there and we just don't realize it. So now that we know that, it's okay not to trim or clean up your shrubs until early to mid-spring. Like here, I would wait till April to May because those native pollinators will either live in the ground or they will live in the hollow stems of some of your bushes. So what you do is wait until April to May and then go ahead and trim, because by then the sun is out, those eggs have hatched, and that native pollinator has come out already and started its life cycle again. So it's okay to leave a little bit of a messy yard till right about April or May. Honeybees and native pollinators, we teach that it's okay to support both. They both have their place. Native bees have been around for a long time, and there are some crops that honeybees aren't equipped to thoroughly pollinate, such as tomato and squash flowers. A lot of the squash blossoms need buzz pollination. They need movement because, as you'll see in this next slide, this is a squash blossom. This was a study that Pennsylvania State University, I believe it was, did a study on what bees are visiting the squash blossoms. Anything from the cucurbit family, which would be melons and squashes and cucumbers. Their pollen is real heavy. It's large, spiky, and heavy. So it's difficult to collect and digest by most bees. For example, the bumblebees and the honeybees don't actively collect the pollen generally from these flowers because of that reason, because they're heavy and spiky and they don't digest well. But they will go after that nectar. They'll go down deep in there and get that nectar. Squash bees, they can handle that pollen. Bumblebees, again, they will go after the nectar, but the shaking of their body, the buzz pollination, is what helps pollinate. %70 of these native pollinators live in the ground. These little holes in the soil right there will show you, it may look like a little ant hills, but it's most likely a native bee, like the one you see poking its head out right there. They depend on having some soil that isn't covered by mulch because it's difficult to climb through all that bark or whatever you've decided to put over your soil. So putting in a pollinator garden, I would say leave a little area of soil not covered just for them. 70% live in the ground. And there's some research at WSU that's looking at how important honeybees are to certain crops that we enjoy here in Washington. But some crops like blueberries typically bloom early, and the Pacific Northwest weather can be wet and cool at that time. So since other native bees aren't so squeamish about the cooler weather, WSU research teams are looking at using mason bees and bumblebees as primary pollinators for these crops. If you get the chance, check out WSU Bee Lab. The website is bees.wsu.edu. There's a lot of research going on about honeybees and disease and how to keep them healthy, because we want them around. Yes, they do. They nest in the ground, 70% of them. Now, since you're honeybee collectors or farmers, many of you probably know about mason bees, or many of you may even keep mason bees. We do here. Paul's the honeybee guy, and I do mason bees. I don't want to dress up in a suit and be around thousands of stinging bees, but I love watching them. So mason bees are super docile. They're native to this area, so they're used to our native plants. And you can do them with your kids or grandkids. They're super docile. They don't have a queen or a hive to defend. They're easy to manage. There are over 130 types of mason bees just in the Northwest. This is a short video that we did. Paul picked up an observation hive so we could see what the mason bees do when they're making their nests and laying their eggs. We try not to disturb them here, but you'll see how they make little cells with, okay, there's a couple of them in there. There's one in there, it's a little girl, and she's building a mud wall. Behind that is already a pollen cookie, or whatever you want to call it, and there's a teeny tiny egg she's already implanted on that ball of pollen. She'll start and do some females in the back, 3 or 4, and then she'll wall that off. Then she'll start to lay male eggs because the males come out first. When the sun starts warming, there she is, starts warming the nest, the males will start to come out and they go look for food, and then they hang out and wait for the females to come out, and then they start the process all over again. They visit about 75 flowers per trip. They're very busy. Just for one tube of eggs, 15 to 35 trips to collect enough pollen for one larva. So for this reason, and they only lay 30 eggs in her lifetime, she only lives about 6 weeks. And they don't fly very far looking for food. I think it's up to 300 feet. So if you do mason bees, you want to have some flowers nearby so they don't have to expend a lot of energy. They already spend a lot of energy looking for flowers, and then they're going to need some soil that's uncovered so they can make their mud and pack those in. And there was a study done that showed that orchard mason bees can pollinate an acre of apples, where it takes 2 full hives to do the same thing. However, because of the mason bee's short lifespan, the honeybee hive is preferred, especially for commercial crops, because of the queen, and she'd keep laying eggs, and that 6 weeks just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. Much longer lifespan for commercial pollination. If you want to know more about mason bees, these are some excellent resources here. Xerces, gardening.wsu has a great publication on it. Crownbees.com has a lot of do-it-yourself and educational tutorials. If you keep mason bees and you're a little stuck on how to clean those cocoons, they'll walk you right through it. These are some great resources here. Why are they so important? Well, we hear on the news of how important they are, and we all like to eat. So if you just have a vegetable garden, your crop yields are going to be so much stronger, because Some crops require multiple visits to fully pollinate. So the fruit set is much more consistent when you have good pollination. I know that when Paul doesn't have a lot of beehives on our front property, we can tell by the fruit trees and the blueberries and the vegetable garden does much better when he's got a lot of healthy hives flying around. Even if they do swarm, and I yell at him to get the swarms away from my garden so I can get out there. And more seed production. So that's all very important. We love to eat and they like what we offer, so it's a win-win. Some blossoms that you can think about in your own yard or your own property, depending on what side of the mountains you are. This USDA put out a really good publication about the Pacific lowlands, which would, I think, cover both eastern and western Washington. Early to mid-spring, you're going to look for, these are like trees and shrubs that a lot of us have around just in the landscape. Never mind having to go buy anything. We have a lot of maples around here, and hazelnuts grow like weeds on the western side. Indian plum pops up everywhere. Anytime a bird dropped a seed, an Indian plum or hazelnut pops up. And the vine maples are very prolific as well. The ones in red have extra pollen, and I was told by a resident master beekeeper over here, suggested in the spring, you guys might be looking for plants that have a higher pollen count so they can get that protein. After living off sugar water or whatever you guys feed them during the winter, they need some good nutrition. And that's what this talk is all about, is how to provide some good nutrition for your bees. Willow's a really good one. Hazelnut, crocus, alder, willows, pussy willow, yes, all of that. And later in the season, since we're trying to cover from early to late summer to early fall, these are a lot of flowering plants that you can buy or you might already have in your flower bed out back. Asters, chamomile, daisies, echinacea, lavender, lemon balm, lupin, sunflowers, all the berries, blackberry, raspberry, full of good protein, sunflowers, apple, apricot, plum, cherry. Boy, I take it all. We have 2 acres here, and we try to plant as much as we can that produces some kind of food. So your vegetable plants, any herbs. Behind me is a thyme plant that we let flower, and the bees love it. Anytime you grow any kind of herbs and you harvest what you want, then let it flower. Something will love it. Honeybees, thank goodness. They have, USDA says that they have provided 15 billion in crop pollination just in 2014. They don't do this every year, so this was the most recent. These are the most recent numbers that I could find from the USDA site. Native insect pollinators, 10 billion. So they're working together. It depends on the crop, and those who raise these crops commercially know what kind of pollinators they need, depending on the anatomy of the pollinator. So this is awesome. WSU has a new honeybee research center that opened up the spring of 2020. They have a diagnostic lab, they do bee breeding, a lot of research. And currently they are working with Paul Stamets, who's a mycologist, mushroom guy. I think he owns or runs Fungi Perfecti. They are testing to see if mushroom extracts will enhance the honeybee's immune system against disease and pests. And I haven't heard anything lately, but the last I heard, they had some real promising test results. So I'm real anxious to see how that goes. Again, here's this link to bees.wsu.edu, where you can find out more about what WSU is doing for honeybee research. NASA put up this site that, depending on where you are in the country, you can click on your region. I'm not going to do it here because I think it'll eat up a lot of bandwidth. You can click on your region and it will list out plants that are blooming during certain seasons. You can find a scientific name, And then if you don't like that, you can go by the common name of the plant. And then off to the right, it'll show you when it blooms and how long it'll bloom. So that'll be real important when you're creating the habitat around your place for your beehives, to find things that bloom early and bloom late and start planting. This is very helpful. Why are they so important? Because we like to eat, and 80%, 75 to 80% of fruit, vegetables, and nut options worldwide are available because pollinators are doing what we depend on them to do. So we want to make sure we take good care of them. Washington bees, honeybees, look at that. This came from Introduction to Bees class from the Olympia Beekeepers Association. Had these statistics. 3.7 million pounds of honey produced and 4,000 pounds of beeswax. And we're 10th in honey production in the state, the state in the US. Now, normally we do this with a public crowd, but I want you to just think to yourself and see if you can guess which state is the #1 honeybee or honey producer in the US. What do you think it is? The answer is North Dakota. How much honey did they produce? 28.3 million pounds of honey. That's amazing. Whatever they're doing up there, I don't know how they get that much honey. But North Dakota wins. But we're still #10, so we're still cool. So why are they so important? What would life be without these yummy things? Hamburgers, pumpkin pie, coffee, green beans, apples. I think we did this around Thanksgiving time one year. So that's why we had green bean casserole and apple pie and all that. So why is hamburger up there? What's that got to do with pollination? Well, there's an alkali bee and the alfalfa cutter bee that pollinate the alfalfa crop. Cows and other feed animals eat the alfalfa. That's where the hamburger comes from. Okay. Well, and then there's a tomato too. Lettuce, we don't need anything, and wheat is wind pollinated. So the tomato and the hamburger, so that counts, right? Where would we be without these yummy things? Thank you, pollinators. So what do pollinators look for when they're flying around or crawling around? They're looking for certain colors. They're looking for an ultraviolet signature that shows them where the food is, as you can see. They're looking for a heat signature, electrostatic signature. There's all kinds of things. The crawling insects use scent, and flying insects use sight. Or flying insects and birds. There's a fellow by the name of Craig Burrows Photography. His website is cpburrows.com, and he uses UV photography and shows us what flowers look like to our birds and bees and other pollinators. This is an amaryllis flower. This is a Mexican sunflower. I mean, you know, if you were flying around, you can see where all the good stuff is, right? You would land right in there, eat your lunch, and move on to the next flower. There was a study done at the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom that proved that flowers actually give off a heat signal that attracts certain pollinators. So they've got all their senses going and looking for food with the least amount of effort. Here's what a bat is going to see at night. They're going to see a white flower. We would see a white flower, but the bat's going to see this and know right where to go, right where to land, put his long tongue in through there to get the nectar down at the base, and all that pollen's going to stick to the bat's fur and move on to the next blossom. Fascinating. Here's a St. John's wort flower. We have this out at the Thurston County Fairgrounds at our pollinator garden, and it produces beautiful yellow flowers full of pollen. And then when it's done, it produces a red berry that wildlife like to eat. It's a really good plant, St. John's wort. How to attract them? You want to try to nourish both native and honeybees, native pollinators and honeybees. Try to offer a good food source from spring through late fall, and have a good water source and some open ground. so they can nest. This was a private yard project that we did to take an area that was very sad looking after a couple trees came down. And we decided we would help them design a pollinator garden. So we took all the junk out and we brought in some good compost and lined it. And then we went shopping for some plants. We went around to some local nurseries and asked where they buy their plants, if they grow their own. This is something you can do. When you go shopping, ask them where the plants come from. Are they pollinator safe? And they might ask you, what does that mean? And you would say, do you spray them with anything? Or are they sprayed with anything toxic? If they say they don't know, you might want to shop at the next place. What we found was a lot of our local nurseries were very savvy about pollinators and had already decided to not spray plants that they take ownership of, or they grow some of their own, or they require their growers to take a pledge and not spray toxic chemicals on the plants. So we found those at farmers markets and local nurseries. And after just a short amount of time, we've got this beautiful pollinator garden in these people's backyard. And we've got things like spring and summer and fall. We've got autumn joy sedum right here, full bloom. In fact, before the blooms even came out, the bees were on it. They could tell before they popped open, the bees were waiting. And we've got beautiful asters here. Asters are one of my favorite plants because they bloom well into the fall. Long blooming. Hardy fuchsia back there. I think there's some daylilies. Not sure what else we had back in there. Oh, bee balm. Yes. Marshmallow. Marshmallow is a great long blooming plant also. Then we did a community pollinator garden. This is where we adopted a garden at our local county fairgrounds. And Beekeeper and Gardener, this is what we wanted to show and demonstrate is that we have like minds. We want to create a healthy habitat for bees and pollinators and our plants. So what we did was take over this bed, which there was nothing there. We did our little walkway through there. We put some mulch down, some good compost. Then we went shopping for some pollinator safe plants. Laid out the irrigation. We made some good friends too with our local nurseries, and we go back every year to get some good plants from them. They know us on site. Within 2 or 3 years, we had a pollinator garden that looked like this at the fairgrounds, and it's still there 10 years later. This was actually my project to become certified as a master gardener. We've got bee balm, calendula, hibiscus, black-eyed Susans, echinacea, rosemary, sage, bee balm over here. We try to demonstrate that the flowers that maybe your mom or your grandmother or grandfather had in their yards, those are the best ones, the heirloom, the open pollinated, not the hybrids. And there's a reason, because the hybrid, the ones that are so hybridized, they lose their nutrition. They're bred to be beautiful and have multiple heads on them and gorgeous in your hanging baskets. Go ahead and do it on your back deck. But if you're planting something for pollinators out in the backyard, try to stay with the old favorites. That's what the bees know, and that's what will give them the best nutrition for the effort that they put forward to come to your garden. Give them a good water source. We put up a little bird bath, but we filled it with a lot of rocks or pebbles or marbles, anything that the bees or the pollinator can land on and drink without falling in. And you guys probably know this. I heard it from Beekeeper over here that a healthy honeybee hive can go through a gallon of water in the heat of summer. They need it for a variety of reasons. So we keep it filled with fresh water, make sure they have lots of water options. And make sure you don't cover everything with mulch. I've got an area further down where we don't have any mulch at all, so that the nesting bees can go down in and build their nests, because that's where they lay their eggs, rear their young. Well, now we heard all the negative stuff, so why don't we go for what are we doing right? We're all more aware of pollinators now. It's like the new thing to talk about. Washington is now requiring public works projects that includes landscaping to save out at least 25% for pollinator habitat. And we started to see that around here. In fact, we saw this our state capitol in Olympia, the governor collaborated with several groups in the area and put in, we don't know if it's the first, but it's one of the first pollinators on a state capitol campus. And it's beautiful, and people enjoy that. They walk through and they become more educated on what are pollinators. I didn't know they like these kind of plants. Here you've got another thyme blossom up here with a beautiful butterfly on it. If you build it, they will come. Yes, they will. Washington is the first state to legally protect certain species of threatened bumblebees. We all heard about the bumblebees starting to decline across the United States. And a lot of people are doing some great things to try to save them. And Washington actually put forth a bill just this year. I'm not sure if it's totally signed. It may have made it through the legislature, but there's a link here to it so you can read more about it. And the next one, the Senate bill here, I'm not sure if it made it to the governor's desk yet, but perhaps WASPA knows a little bit more about this one. This is to ensure that homeowners, Washington homeowners, will be allowed to create bee habitats and have beehives on their property, regardless of homeowners association regulations or other municipality rules that might say they can't. The state says you can. So we'll be watching this one and see how it plays out and see, how it's received. Save those bees. What can beekeepers and gardeners do? Learn about integrated pest management. Talk to your master gardeners. Try not to use herbs and pesticides when there are other control methods that you could use. And you'll learn about those by talking to your extension office or your master gardener groups that every county has. We're there to help you, either phone or email. It's staffed by volunteers, so that might be restricted hours, but just reach out. You can take a picture of what you have in your garden and say, what's eating my plant? What's wrong with this thing? I don't understand why it's not growing. And then we'll try to help you figure it out. There are so many things you can do besides spraying, because most of the bugs that you think might be a pest are not. They're mostly beneficial. There's a very small percentage of the bugs that you see that are harmful. They just like to eat your plant. They're not harmful. They're just eating. So we need to discourage them from eating your broccoli or your lettuce or whatever your favorite plant is out there. Also learn to plant varieties for your growing zone. Well, what the heck is that? Well, there are a couple of links here that can help you learn about plants for bees and what you can do for pollinators. And then on this other slide, we're going to show you a website called greatplantpicks.org. This is an awesome site where anybody can go and look up deer-resistant plants or plants for butterflies or planting on a hillside, shady, sunny, desert, whatever. They have lists that you can easily sort through and look for what you need for your specific yard needs. There's another link here for the extension offices. You can find one near you. This again is, this is pollinator.org. They have so much helpful information for anybody about bees and all pollinators. Something that has come to light through Paul's studies with Cornell is that they're recommending, and as gardeners too, we tell our gardeners to go out in your garden, grab your coffee or teacup and go wander out there, even if you're in your bathrobe, who cares? Go look and see what's going on. That's when you're going to see, you might see slugs, or you might see the bees are out early buzzing on your plants and your blossoms. You're like, oh, good, we're going to have peas this year because the bees are pollinating. The same for beekeeping, to become aware of what's going on out in the beehives. Wander out there, go watch them for a bit, see what they're bringing in. What color is the pollen? Get used to looking at the weather, and like it was 88, what, last weekend? And now it's like 64, cloudy and drizzling. Some years we have super hot summers. Some years we have a summer that's barely 3 weeks long and it's done. And we're all mad as heck because we didn't have our vacation yet. This is what is helpful if you watch your bee colonies based on weather and how it affects the availability of certain flowers that they depend upon. Some years things are going to bloom successfully and bees are going to be bringing in pollen like crazy. Other years, poor weather is going to change that. The point is be aware and adapt. The plants and the bees and pollinators have adapted over decades and centuries. So you can help them by being more aware and seeing maybe what you might plant next year so they have more food offerings. Connect to the environment around you. Become one. Beekeepers and gardeners, we have the same goals or similar goals. And we just want everybody to have a healthy environment. We do better with a healthy diet. Your bees do better with a healthy diet. Our plants do better when we have healthy soil and nutrients in the soil. So I think setting up one or the other is not exclusive. Doing both at the same time has so much benefit to everybody. Talk to your neighbors. We, as master gardeners for our pollinator garden, we would invite beekeepers to come and help us maintain it. And it's surprising how many gardeners are also beekeepers. We had several that showed up and said, yeah, I keep bees, or at least mason bees. They were aware of the connection, you know, the way we're connected to nature. It's just part of us, the circle of life. In summary, choose plants from local nurseries. I say not big box stores, but there are some that are starting to offer organically grown plants. So it's best to, whatever you have available, go and chat with whoever buys the plants for your store and tell them you want to set something up that's safe for pollinators, and they could point you to what they may have that is not, you know, toxically sprayed. Farmers markets, we have so many local growers that sell at our farmers markets, and plant some of the old time favorites, open pollinated. You know, you can see how these pollinators here just adore these plants. They're not double and triple blossomed, you know, geraniums or something. They are simple, just the way they've always been in the nutrition that they offer. Try not to get hybrids unless you want some around your, you know, your front door or something. That's absolutely fine. But when you plant an area specifically for pollinators, try to stay away from that. Pollinators know how to recognize those old favorites and those native plants. They adore them. Talk to your local county extension office, master gardeners, about how to tackle pests and you know, pesticides and herbicide use, and try not to spray when there are blossoms. Just don't. You could wait till the blossoms are done. If you need to do some kind of spraying for your fruit trees, spray them before blossoms break. Wait till after they fruit. That would be another way to do it. This is the same link that was before, but just in case you didn't catch it, this is where you can look at, where do I find a master gardener in my county, and they would be happy to help you. There's a lot of links here for publications that WSU has, Washington State University, and we also work closely with Oregon State University. Since we're in a similar climate locale, we have a lot of similar issues with bugs and growing problems. So OSU has a lot of things also, and xerces.org. They're a great nonprofit group that educates everyone on pollinators and how to plant things for them. You may want to take a picture of this with your phone and look these up on your own. I did send a list of the web links to the web hosts. There might be a way that they can capture that and send it out to you. I'm not really sure. So I'll wait just a moment and see if anybody wants to take a snapshot of that. Recommended reading. Paul and I have chosen these specific books as being very helpful for not only the honeybees, native bees, mason bees, but how to choose plants to keep your bees healthy. 100 Plants to Feed Bees is an excellent book full of pictures. I love pictures. Bee Friendly Garden, very helpful too. I think that's the one that told you when the plants bloom and what pollinators are attracted to it. It was a very helpful book. Some more web links here. That would be another one to take a picture with your phone. Pollinator Partnership. They're the ones I'm working with right now to become a pollinator steward. There's quite a bit of training there, and they're passionate about teaching people how what we do impacts pollinators, whether we know it or not, because you didn't realize that they were out there. We didn't realize that there was one that was a 1/16 of an inch long and flies 25 miles an hour, or that a lemur was considered a pollinator. So the more we learn, the more we're aware, the more we can chat with our neighbors and our friends and family and learn that we can impact them in a positive way. If you have the chance and you're in Olympia, come and see us at the Thurston County Fairgrounds. Their grounds are open Monday through Friday. You can just wander. You can walk through the grounds and come and see our pollinator garden. We have a Facebook page here, Facebook Pollinator Garden TC for Thurston County. And we put up educational things on the page, and you'll kind of see what we're all about, what we're doing. So with your newfound knowledge, let's get out there and plant something. Thank you so much. We can definitely take some questions now. On behalf of WSU Thurston County Master Gardeners and Washington State Beekeepers Association, thank you so much for your time and attention this evening. You can be a bee helper by being aware. Chat with your neighbors and agree not to spray something until you understand what the pest or the disease is. Consult with your master gardeners for help and decide what's best for your yard. And that's it.
Yes, you came in right at about an hour, so that was
Hey,
terrific.
how
And
about
thank you very much for all the really good information. I don't see any questions here. I did put all of the websites into the chat, so if someone wants to
wonderful.
check that out, that will be available to them.
That's great. That's great.
So I guess I do have a question about the pollinator garden that you have at the fairgrounds. Is that
Yes.
mostly perennial plants? And
Yes.
what is maintenance like?
Well, the biggest thing we have is weeding because they have grass nearby. So any kind of mowing throws a lot of weed seeds in there. Some of the soil that we brought in had bindweed in, and we're struggling so hard with that one. Bindweed and buttercup is something we struggle with in Western Washington. I don't know about the east side, what your nemesis is when you're out in the garden.
I
Yeah.
think we
So you have
have
to be careful where you
bindweed.
get your soil. Pardon me?
I think we have bindweed.
Yes.
We do have buttercups as well, but I don't think of them as a weed. I don't generally see them in my garden.
Ours is in the pasture and the lawn. It's flower beds. It's really hard to get rid of because the seeds stay viable for like 15 years. And so you can try to smother them, but they're going to stay under there and come out when you stir the soil up to plant something. So as far as perennials, the biggest thing would be near the fall to kind of tidy them up a little bit. But what we are learning is that we don't cut them to the ground. We leave, we don't even cut off the seed heads except for the goldenrod, because goldenrod and milkweed, they just spread like crazy. So we do cut those off to be responsible neighbors. But everything else we leave, so the birds will actually come and nibble on the echinacea seed heads and some of the other flowers. And then in the spring, we will go in and some of the perennials will start getting bigger and bigger. So we'll divide them and make new plants out of them. And we don't trim off. Like I left the bee balm, I pretty much left that. The echinacea stayed. It's mostly tidying up around April. We kind of clean off some of the dead head things. You know, they come back every year, which is the beauty. But pretty soon they outgrow their area. So that's when we have to decide. Crocosmia is like, it's beautiful, but it grows like a weed and it spreads like crazy. So we're always pulling those up and giving them to somebody. Here, it spreads, but it's beautiful. And butterflies and, or not butterflies, but hummingbirds adore crocosmia. Yeah,
And
it keeps growing every year.
wow, I mean, the garden looks beautiful. So, I guess the other question that I would have is, what kind of things did you plant? So you have flowers, toward the end of the summer, like August and September.
That was black-eyed Susan and asters and hardy fuchsia were the long blooming hangers-oners that lasted a long time until some frost took them out. The asters are my favorite, and then the hardy fuchsia, it was great.
And how cold can hardy fuchsia stand?
I've got one in the front yard that I may have trimmed a little too hard because I don't see any activity on it right now. Um, we don't get horribly cold here. We might get to 17 to 20 for a week or two, but not long-standing hard frost. We're more temperate, a little closer to the ocean.
Yeah, I think that would not work for us in Eastern Washington.
Maybe not. That's where your local master gardeners can help you because they would know what your climate is and be able to suggest something that would suit you better. I know it works in my yard.
And do you have any do they have any hives at the fairgrounds? I'm assuming not, but just
No,
asking. Yeah.
no.
And do
They
you
do
put
during the fair. During the fair, the Olympia beekeepers bring some bees behind plexiglass just for the 5-day stretch of the fair. So the kids can come in and get honey sticks and they can see the queen and they're all oohing and awing over seeing live bees. That's the only time there are live bees on the grounds that
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, but we have a lot of bees visit the garden.
Yes, we do. Bumblebees like crazy. And I've seen some honeybees, so there's some hives around somewhere. It's close by a lot of neighborhoods where the fairgrounds is. So we get lots of things cruising through.
Yeah, one year we took a honeybee nest out of a fair building wall, so they're there.
You know what else
uh-huh.
brings a lot of bees, different species of bees, is the goldenrod. Goldenrod, we probably had 10 different species of native bees and honeybees and bumblebees all over it. It's a good pollen and nectar source, and it blooms all summer long. But you need to cut those seed heads off because they spread in the wind just like a dandelion, and you'll find it everywhere. But it's a beautiful plant.
And I do think that would be something that could grow in colder climates.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. This specific variety grows up in Canada. It's a big tall one. It's 4 or 5 feet tall.
And comfrey, can't kill that.
Yeah, kill comfrey. Oh, comfrey. Yeah, we have 1 or 2 comfrey plants. We probably have 20 of them now.
Yeah. I planted borage one year for the bees, and that's probably 5 or 6 years
Yeah.
ago, and they still have volunteers every year.
Yes, I started doing that in the vegetable beds, and now I've decided they're going to be in their own planter over there, not intermixed, because they come up every year all over the place, even where I didn't think I planted any.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any questions. You must have been so thorough that no one has
Well,
any
you're also
questions.
enlightened now. What are you all going to do? You're going to go out there and plant something. I don't care what it is.
Definitely.
Go find something,
Definitely.
plant it, and watch something come and visit and eat.
So thank you so much. It
Sure.
was a very interesting program, and we really appreciate the time that you took to tell us about all of the different kinds of pollinators and the ways that you can support them. Um,
Okay.
and if you're interested, you can find your presentation at Ask a Washington Beekeeper.
Fantastic. Any questions come up, you know how to reach us, and we'll try to answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yep. Good evening, everyone.
Mhm.